Now let's understand, can we have same URL defined for multiple resources? That means, is it possible, can we define same routing URL for two different action method, right? This one or more than two different action method, right? So let's say let me remove a breakpoint. And for example, let's say we want to define this routing URL for this resource also and for this resource also. So will the application run? Is it possible? So let's look into the picture. So what I'm going to do, for this action method, we have already defined this routing URL, and same routing URL I'm going to define for this resource, for this action method, right? So as of now, we have to find same routing URL for this action method also and for this action method also, right? So let's save the changes and run the application. Our application has been built successfully. So so to run in our local, after this domain name, we need to provide routing URL. So as we have defined, for this resource and for this resource, we have defined the same routing URL, that is your search pattern, right? So let's call it over here and let's see what's going to happen. You can see we are getting an ambiguity. And why we are getting this ambiguity? Because at this point of time, application got confused to which resource or action method does it needs to call, right? As we have defined the same routing URL, now at runtime, application got confused whether it has to call this resource or it has to call this resource, right? So that's why we are getting this ambiguity, right? Now let's say for calling this resource or action method, we have defined other routing URLs, right? Let's say if we call this, right? So let's look into the picture. Now we are able to call this action method and we are getting the desired output, right? Similarly, we can call this resource by providing this kind of pattern that we have discussed in the previous videos. So the key point here is that we cannot provide the same routing URL to multiple resources, right? Or we can say in a layman term that we cannot have same routing URL or pattern for two different action method or multiple action methods, right? If you remember, if you have watched my previous video on routing, I have already discussed that a resource can have multiple unique URL, right? As we can see in the code, a particular resource can have multiple unique routing URL defined, right? But multiple resources cannot have the same URL. That's what we have discussed right now in this video, that multiple resources cannot have the same routing URL pattern, right? So that is all for this video, and now we will meet in the next video, so stay tuned. Let me stop the application and let's meet in the next video with the new topic.